So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Great, we have your attention. Well, we're going now talk in the next 25 minutes or so about a very pertinent matter, which is AI and education. And I'm sure all of you are quite familiar with this rather polarized feelings towards AI. In one end, we'll read the news that AGI is coming and everything is lost. And in another way, we'll see the amazing potential or failure of trying to achieve something with your prompt. How does this situate into education, into future generations, looking really from childhood onwards through K-12 to universities and beyond? This is where we're going to spend our time on. But, well, if we kick it off, a question for all of you. Ronit, if you think about three things about you, Gen I, and education in 2025 here at DLD, what those three things are?
Thank you, Stan. I would probably land on leadership, co-creation, and urgency. Why leadership? Because we are at Google, we are at the forefront of foundational research. We then feed this research into our products. We have this imperative and duty to lead and to influence, not just to observe things, leadership. And I see myself as a leader in this AI literacy space. So this is the intersection between Google and myself. To your question, co-creation. We don't do our things alone. We work with experts, AI experts, students, and teachers, right? With the users themselves. This is about co-creation and urgency. Guys, the transformation is huge, and we want to avoid this AI literacy gap, and we need to act now, full stop.
Alex.
Human agency, curiosity, and the human advantage. Basically, I think so much of the focus is on the tools themselves, but really, if you think about the project of education, it's preparing students to, ultimately add value and thrive in this world where AI is everywhere. And the question is knowing how to use AI tools sufficient? And I would argue it's necessary but insufficient. What really matters is how do we empower kids to really bring the human advantage to the table? And it may or may not be the case that AI can solve all the challenges that it's going to create. It can help us solve them, but I think actually what's inspiring to me is that humans are actually at the absolute center of the solution.
Alexander.
I'm enthusiastic, but not drunk about AI. I think education is the field where we have the most impact, where we see the most impact in terms of AI. Well, and I'm a total nerd.
Great. So I think we have already 9 keywords to take back home, to take to your organizations, to your corporate boardrooms, startups, and so forth. Well, before we're going to show some really amazing things what learning models have done to the landscape, let's a little bit zoom in into what the landscape has been in terms of structural transformation. And Alex, you work quite closely with K-12 and high schools and so forth. So what do you see in terms of the transformation of the learning journey, where these tools are available to everyone, including the kids and young adults in school?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that we really haven't seen any transformation from AI yet. Everybody's still figuring it out. There was a study from MIT that found like 95% of companies have actually failed in their AI implementations. I think the same is probably the case in schools. The transformation that really is in front of us, part of that is a question of like how do we implement the AI tools, but the more important question in my view is how does school need to transform for a world not just where every classroom is in some way harnessing AI, but really every industry, every business, and every sort of aspect of our lives is integrating AI. And the answer to that question is probably not just a question of which tool do we deploy. It's actually this question of like how do we need to evolve learning to make it more engaging, to actually build on the critical thinking skills, to and frankly to make sure that kids are learning math and science and language and social studies. And so this is sort of a big unanswered question right now, is like, will we harness this zeitgeist moment to sell more widgets, or will this actually be a chance for us to step back and really consider, frankly, a lot of these changes have been long overdue, and we've talked about 21st century skills. I think we now understand what that looks like, and so this is the moment. What we do with it is, I think, on all of you.
Whose responsibility is it?
I think everybody, but I mean, especially decision makers who oversee schools, because they're the ones deciding, do we Do we focus on buying tools? Do we focus on investing in our human capital?
It's a very good point to make. Responsibility and agency in this very urgent landscape. Alexander, we conversed quite a lot about the changing role of universities, and we all come back from a very classical learn, make hard work, earn merit, be evaluated type of a background. You've seen a very rapid changes in the university landscape, both in terms of cohesion, in terms of involvement, performance, and so forth. What are your observations?
Yeah, I think so. At the moment, from an institutional perspective, I don't really see that too many things have changed, at least in Germany or in Europe.
But from a participant and a learner's perspective?
From a participant and the learner's perspective, a lot has changed. Every student is using Gen AI in a way that nobody knows if that makes sense or if that is useful. Everybody just does it. And I guess specifically they are using it for doing homework, and the question is that really the best use of AI for that kind of things? I guess the more interesting question is how is that going to change? And I think there's a bunch of opportunities that arise from that technology, because we can modify or we can revolutionize the way that we are giving classes. We can turn them bi-directional, we can personalize them. And that's the kind of things that will be enabled, that is currently being enabled by the technology, but we are not there yet entirely.
You had a point that homework needs to be, or work needs to be hard.
Yeah, that's one.
But what do you mean by this in this evolving landscape?
Right, so we have built a system, one tutor, that is also going to be presented later on. And that system is used, we're going to talk about that later, I guess. That system is used to question, or you, as a student, you can ask a class about whatever content, you can get quizzed about that. And there's a lot of work, of course, going on in that area, and one idea is that of a Socratic tutor, where you can ask questions, hey, I didn't really fully understand that homework, can you help me with that? And I think that is problematic, because of course, these tutoring systems, they don't give you the response, but they may help too much. I think the very point about homework is that it is hard, and I understand that there's a potential for frustration, and we need to cope with that. But when I did my homework in computer science, I'm a software engineering person, every sheet of exercises took 10 hours, out of which 8 hours were spent running in circuits and banging my head against the wall. And I think the most that I learned was during these 8 hours. And if these 8 hours are now shortened to 1 hour or something, I'm really missing out on that. For instance, all the different things that won't work. And that is something that we need to control.
And understanding context and application. And
if we have a totally uncontrolled way of using these systems for just do the homework for me, because my point is not to get education, but my point is to pass the exercises or whatever, that is going to be problematic.
Ronit, Alexander just spelled out that everyone is using those tools. So let's not ignore the fact. From your perspective, as a very well-cherished Google AI literary champion, why it's important to ensure that young learners have the knowledge and confidence to engage with AI, engage it with responsibility, and what is Google doing about this?
Yeah, I will start with a question that I discussed with Alex today over breakfast. You know, I told Alex, you know, you remember the debate around banning AI, right? I'm not sure that in a year from now we'll hear this debate anymore, right? Because it's not desirable, and frankly, I'm not sure it's feasible anymore, right?
Impossible.
So I think that this is the simple answer to why Google needs to focus on AI. It's part of our life, period, right?
May I intervene?
Yeah.
How many of you have tried Google's learning products? Hands up.
You see? The majority, if not everyone, right? So it's part of our life, and you know, you can see the studies. Students engage with chatbots or with AI on a regular basis. We just talked about homework, prepping for tests, writing essays. It's not just about that, it's about emotional and social support. AI chatbots became a sort of breakup kind of coaches and things like that. It's insane. It's the first stop for every question you have in your life. This is why it's an imperative for Google to lead in this area. Now, talking about the mission of Google, you know, we started in 1998. We talked about organizing the world information and make it universally accessible and useful. This is our mission statement for day one, and education and learning has to do a lot with that. So this is part of our mission. It's rooted in our mission. Third, we have the, I would say, ethical kind of approach, ethical awareness, and we want to make sure that our models are grounded in these principles, ethical principles and learning science principles. And I think that Google can make it happen.
I think it's an interesting way where it points down to not native AI use, but some type of an AI assisted or AI readiness in an educational system. Alex, you've kind of argued that we should start exploring this new AI readiness paradigm. What is that?
Yeah, so AID, we've been around for like 6.5 years. We were really the first organization in the US to be pushing for, preparing students for the age of AI. This is long before ChatGPT. I like to replace AI with cell phones. And imagine you go back to 2006, 2005, and someone comes up to you and says, cell phone literacy, this should be the top priority of every school. And the reason is because you won't be able to do your job without a cell phone. Cell phones will be an integrated part of everyday life. This is going to transform the world. And with the benefit of hindsight, you'd say, well, all of that is correct, and yet nobody is going to hire you because you know how to use a phone. And so I think AI literacy, which is often I think the moniker that folks anchor on, it's not enough. It's like everybody's going to be using AI, yes, no doubt. The real question is, what is going to add economic value in the labor market? Because if everybody can do something with AI, that means that you're not going to pay somebody for that skill. It's the same reason the air traffic controllers make 4 times as much as a crosswalk coordinator. And the reason is because any one of us could go and be a crosswalk coordinator tomorrow. I assume, I don't know, maybe you have some experience with air traffic control, but generally most people don't have that domain expertise. And so AI readiness is really an allusion to not just how do you deploy AI and use AI, but also what else needs to be a part of this, sort of the development.
Alexander, so if you understand that we need to be ready, how should we retailer the relationships, these tutor to participant, student to student relationship, and etc.? I mean, is examining and testing people a choice at all, and how are you addressing these issues?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. So one observation that I guess everybody is making is that students don't come to campus anymore, and because there is the possibility to learn from home. And that, of course, is convenient. That's a post-COVID kind of phenomenon. Now all the material is there, and why should they come to university? And specifically, that's a perspective that the students are taking. And I think that's fundamentally wrong, because I'm convinced that most students learn as much from their fellow students as they learn from their instructors or from their professors. At least that was the case for me. And everybody I've talked to has made that very experience. And I think the real challenge is, and that maybe relates to the question of how to design the relationship between instructors and students and ultimately AI and virtual tutors. Yeah, that's I guess the $1 million question. The kind of system that we are building that is about virtual tutoring, that is about helping with learning, in fact, is probably increasing that effect. And I think it's a bad effect. But on the other hand, I think we can also use that technology to make sure that people may come together. And what we are currently experimenting with is the idea that, so I'm from TUM, which is a mass university. I'm teaching classes with 1,500 students. And we can't just have individual tutoring with them, but maybe we can have individual tutoring with virtual tutors. And that's what we are playing with right now. So the idea is that you have a group of 3, 4, 5 people. They physically meet and they do debates about whatever they have learned that is moderated by an AI. If that is going to work out, I don't know. If we are going to yeah, I mean, the point is not it's working or it's not working. The point is to what extent is it working, with who is it working, and what else can we do.
And it also needs to be measured.
I'd just like to remind everybody that we had a similar situation 15 years ago when MOOCs were hyped, and everybody said, no, that's the end of universities. Guess what happened? Nothing, right? Universities thrived. And what's the reason? The reason is that precisely MOOCs didn't account for that social effect of education. And that really, I think, is the biggest challenge that we have, and universities have to cope with that.
Ronit, I think we all agree that this development of AI tools is just accelerating at groundbreaking speed. I started thinking to myself that a year ago, an AI director or an AI educator were not even job positions, and now or a great prompt engineer, or prompt artist, as a matter of fact. Well, Google is quite close to, I would say, innovating or revolutionizing even the perspective from lab to classroom. We've never been in a process where a scientific discovery or a vehicle for scientific discovery can be tested almost in real time with a community. And I have to admit that a few days ago when we were briefing this panel, I was first introduced to LearnLM, which is learning large language models. That was absolutely fantastic. What is that journey of going from a kind of a general lab into a dedicated large language model for learning?
And just so you know, we just recently has a corridor discussion in the praised LearnLM, but Gemini, the guided learning feature. But I'm not going to elaborate on that. Anyway, thank you for this question. I remember the day when it was a couple of years ago when we asked ourselves, the researchers, our community, what would make the best educational large language model? What are the ingredients? And one key takeaway was that we cannot, improving prompts is not enough, okay? We need to do something that is more foundational. And we took action. We decided to build a family of AI models that is fine-tuned to education and grounded in learning science. It's about pedagogy and research. And we worked in the lab for a few months. And then after it was, and by the way, again, we didn't do it alone. We did it with experts, AI experts, neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, of course, communities of educators and students. And at the end of the day, after the initial launch, it went through a very rigorous validation, right? We took all the feedback from the community and we incorporated it into LearnLM. And then we integrated it into our products, right? We just asked about Gemini and guided learning. I'm sure the most of you are aware of NotebookLM. I'll do the same intervention. Who's familiar with NotebookLM? A lot of people, because it's an excellent tool, right? It's my, okay, I'm a senior director at Google. It's my study buddy, right? And it's not a promotional thing. It's just a thing. It's a fact. I use it on a daily basis to better my understanding of tough topics.
What was the latest thing?
Now I want to mention.
What was the latest tough thing? What you learned?
The latest tough things I was looking for other experimental, gamified kind of experiments, because we just launched yesterday our experiment. It's a AI game called AI Quest, and maybe we can take a look at that after we finalize. I wanted to see if we have more examples. I checked it a few months ago when we embarked on this journey, but I wanted to see how it looks like now. Now, I could have used, Google, the engine, our search engine, but I don't know. I wanted to use NotebookLM. I uploaded a few materials, my materials, and the summarization and the video and audio overviews were amazing. Just saying. Lastly, it's about, again, ethics, responsible AI. We have teams at Google that are dedicated to that. Being AI literate is also being aware of these risks and address them on an ongoing kind of basis, right? We won't finalize with that. It's a journey. So just wanted to put
and
it
it's
here.
not only an student's journey, but it's primarily also a leader's journey to understand where your capabilities and potentials lie in order understanding the technology, making sure of its applications and your ability to tailor those educational paths, both at K-12 or university or even in executive education.
Can I add one sentence here? I think what's also part of the ethical perspective, that is we need to validate and really measure how effective these systems are. Right? We have these systems, we build them, and that's fine. And I think I've realized it during the day. Everybody is saying AI is fantastic and it's fabulous, and it actually is. Nobody really talked about validation of the effectiveness. And I think in terms of education, we absolutely need to do that. And everybody knows these developments in Denmark, where they have stopped digital material from being introduced into the classroom in certain cases. And I'm not saying that the technology is not working. I'm enthusiastic about the technology, but I think it's absolutely necessary to play with it and to really look into how well that is working, how effective it is. Also looking into that from the beginning over 5 years to see, hey, do we really get the improvements, or at least not get better than what we used to have before? That is something that I think is absolutely necessary in terms of an ethical way of handling that kind of technologies.
Plus one to that.
Alex, if you look at the job market, how important it is to measure these correlations?
Or the job market? Yeah, we don't know, right? I mean, like the billion-trillion-dollar question is like, well, what is the impact of AI going to be on jobs? Right now, the most companies' approach is just throw AI at everybody, try to get everybody to be sort of like an AI power user. And then you're seeing sort of like middling outcomes, like some, in certain domains like computer science, engineering, we use it for like things like grant writing. It's incredibly valuable, and like you see a lot of productivity increases. But most companies have not quite extracted the level of outputs that we would expect, given for folks who actually use the technology. It really will come down to, and I truly believe this applies to education, but it really applies to almost every other sector. The change management that's involved. If you look at like sort of like the arc of computers and computerization, it didn't happen overnight, and a lot of companies just bought computers and they were sort of sitting in a room somewhere. They didn't really know what to do with it. Or if you look at the web, the same thing. A bunch of companies created websites. Most of those websites don't exist anymore, or got sold or bought by somebody else. What we need to do now is really think about, not in tandem with the AI tools, how do we invest in the human capital that's going to be necessary, and also how do we reorganize our companies in a way that is sort of best positions people to harness it in an ethical way with humans at the center. And without doing that, I don't think we're actually going to see the outputs that people are promising.
Minding the time, if we would meet here in 1 year, and I hope Alessia agrees, where would we with education and AI? Your 3 theses or predictions if we would meet here in 1 year. Ronita, start.
Overall, not only Google, right? Overall.
Yeah.
I think that we'll move from chaotic kind of Wild West environment that everyone is trying AI to something that is more institutionalized. We already see it. The second thing is about the emergence of pedagogy first AI tools, again, like guided learning in Gemini and other tools. We'll see a real co-creation between teachers and AI tools. I truly believe that we'll get there. And I think that we'll see more and more. We talked about the assessment crisis. We'll see more creative ways to assess the understanding of students. I actually think that we'll return to some traditional kind of assessments, oral exams, and in-person kind of interactions. That's my prediction.
Alex.
I think AI is going to become The AI is, in spaces like this, AI is the protagonist in the story. Like most of the public, at least in the US, does not, only 17% of Americans believe that AI is going to be a net positive over the next 20 years. I think it's going to get much worse. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny on, it's not going to be enough to just say, oh, we're doing AI. In fact, people are going to be very skeptical and maybe even angry. And so it's going to raise the stakes for schools, for leaders, for companies to really demonstrate that what they are doing is thoughtful, is like grounded in research and evidence, and incorporates sort of the broader set of considerations to address the many and I think increasing set of space of concerns that parents, that just citizens are going to have as they start to understand technology.
Alexander.
My understanding, my experience with education institutions is that the inertia is tremendous. So nothing really will change at that level. But there will be a lot of debate.
I love your optimism.
Yeah. No, but there will be a lot of debate, and we will better understand where we really want to go. Because I think at the moment we are just blindly walking everywhere, and we will make up our minds where we want to be.
So to conclude this up, Ronit, we have a very special treat for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to show a preview of something that you launched 2 days ago. What is it?
Yesterday, and we also talked about it earlier today. So it's an AI gamified experience. It's, by the way, one of the approaches that we take is experimenting, because we don't really know where we are headed and what would be successful, what won't be successful. So we came up with this idea that it is inspired by real research from Google Research, flood forecasting. How can we provide students with this experience of being researchers and tackle themselves one of the most burning climate problems? And this is what we do, this is what they do, and it's there. It's called AI Quest. You can check it out. It's new. Very new. Okay. We'll see just the preamble of that, just a quick video to give you the sense of what we are talking about. Animated figures and yeah.
Thank you, Ronit. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alexander. We'll play the clip and then to the band. Enjoy the DLD.
Thank you, Stan.
Welcome to AI Quests. My name is Professor Sky, an AI expert and your mentor throughout this learning experience. We've been waiting for someone like you. You're about to begin a journey through our world. As you travel, you'll meet different inhabitants and learn about the challenges in their communities. Your mission is to help them by applying powerful AI responsibly to their problems. Each quest will teach you about a real-life AI research project that's making an impact back on Earth. The AI technology you'll experience is amazing, but it's not magic. Success depends on the decisions you make. You'll need to collect good data, train your AI to make smart choices, and test it to make sure it's reliable. The universe is counting on you. Are you ready?